Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. We've just seen the final face-off and the weigh-ins ahead of tomorrow's clash between Errol Spence Jr. and Tszyu. A blockbuster fight, a fight that for me has always sort of relied more heavily on Tszyu. I think Tszyu has more to lose in this fight than what Errol Spence does. I think Errol Spence comes into this fight, what he's got to lose is probably harming the resume a little bit. All right, he's got a very good resume, and you can sort of say the one loss on his resume was to Bud Crawford. Well, could you lose to a better name? So you sort of let him off on that, but then you amplify that by putting Tszyu defeat on there. It does make it worse, but apart from that, he's not really got much to lose. Errol Spence has been out of the sport for 3 years. If he loses this and doesn't come back, not much has changed. If he wins it, he can go and have another big payday and have another big fight. Whereas for Tszyu, you lose this fight on the back of Fedora 2, Barkram Murtatalev, and the way that you lost the second Fedora fight and the way you lost the Barkram fight, it's a very, very hard thing to come back from. And for me, you probably don't come back from it. You lose sort of the investment from people wanting to come out and watch you because you are no longer the top of the sport. And I think Tszyu eyes himself still as the top of the sport, and he's still so young. I think we look at Tszyu as an old fighter. Tszyu is so young still, and he, for me, is a guy that still wants to have these big fights, still have a world title fight, make another run for it. And I think he is putting a lot of pressure on himself in this fight. So I do think the stakes are higher for Tszyu. I do think there's more to lose. And you know what? There's probably less to gain. At the end of the day, if Tszyu goes in there and blasts Errol Spence out in 3 rounds, he's probably not going to get the credit that he deserves because Errol Spence has been out of the ring for so long. If he loses, then we all know the noise that's going to come. But we've seen the weigh-ins. Both guys looking very, very good. I think the weight has been a big talking point coming into this fight. For me personally, it was never the biggest talking point, and we're going to get into that. But both guys weighed in 159 pounds, both looking good. Errol looks very, very good. A lot more meat on those bones. You know, it's a big change, isn't it? 160 pounds now compared to the last time we saw him was 147 pounds. A division that he would have to really, really try hard and boil himself down to actually get to. Tszyu, the natural super welterweighter, but under IBF rules was draining himself to make it. And for me, when I looked at him, Errol Spence looked the way that I thought he would look. Tszyu, for me, actually looks better at the weight. I don't think it'll make much of a difference, but if you're going to look at the weight, I think Tszyu looks better. Broader shoulders, a lot more meat on those bones. Like, he just looks more filled out, looks more plumped. And even hearing him talk about his weight cut, saying how good he felt doing the weight cut, that plays a massive role on how you feel coming into fight day. And I think this weight, you know, it was supposed to be 158 pounds. Errol Spence asked it to be moved to 160 pounds about a week out from fight. I think that is a lot to do with late getting into the country and everything else. It's only 2 pounds. It's not that big a difference. And if it benefits anyone, you'd probably say it benefits the guy that's naturally the bigger fighter in Tszyu. But same height, both very, very similar. The only difference for me is, like I said, big, broad shoulders. And I think there's just a bit more meat on Tszyu. And I think that will play a role in this fight to a limited extent. Obviously, you know, Tszyu is going to be able to output a lot more power. He's going to be able to absorb a lot more power. When he fought Barkram, you know, under IBF rules, draining himself, goes down after the first punch. Well, we all know the effects that a bad weight cut and draining yourself has on a fighter. So to have that sort of out of the way, your punch absorption is going to be a lot better. I do think it's going to help Tszyu a lot. And for Errol Spence, I think there's arguments for and against this division. All right, one argument against is, well, you couldn't take the power at 147. How are you going to take the power here? But at the same time, you know, you were quite a powerful fighter at 147. Imagine how strong Errol Spence is going to be at 160. And if that weight sort of carries and you actually can take the punches a lot better in this weight than you could at 147, we're going to see the improvements as well. And the reason for me why the weight thing's never been the biggest sort of tilting point on this fight is simply the fact of, you look at recent fights. Liam Paro going up and taking on Lewis Crocker. That was Lewis Crocker's division, and Liam Paro wins. All right, bigger fights. Bud Crawford going and take on Canelo. That was welterweight to super middleweight. And we saw how good Bud Crawford looked. Bud Crawford is an exceptional fighter, though, so you got to take that into note. Xander Zayas versus Jerome Boutsenis. Jerome Boutsenis was the guy moving up, and we all saw what Jerome did to Xander Zayas. So for me, the weight thing, it plays a role, but it's not going to be the make or break of this fight. And for me, the make or break of this fight has always been the mentality. And for Tszyu seems as though his game plan coming into this fight is to go in there and blast Errol Spence out of there. from everything that I'm hearing, Tim Tszyu wants to go in there and hurt Errol Spence early. He wants to make his presence known. He wants to be aggressive, be in the face, and he's probably taken a lot of that from Jeff Fenech. Now, that's a very good game plan if you can go in there and you can drop Errol Spence and you can give him that PTSD of Bud Crawford. But you go in there and you get fed like you did against Barkram, because that's the same game plan he took in against Barkram was, let me be ultra aggressive, let me get in his face, let me bully you. And Barkram was the cleaner, bigger hitter fighter on that night, and it hurt Tim Tszyu, and he wasn't able to recover from it. And I think Errol Spence now in this division, if Tim Tszyu gets up in his face and he gets caught, he gets countered from Errol Spence, who's now going to be punching a lot heavier, how do you recover from taking that punch? Same for Errol Spence, though. If Tim Tszyu can be that ultra aggressive and give you that PTSD, how do you recover? And that's where this fight really falls for me. It is that mentality of how these two fighters are going to go. And the physical stuff is only going to be so limited. Errol Spence is a terrific athlete, and so is Tim Tszyu. So for me, it doesn't take that bigger role in this fight. For me, it's how these both guys are ready to go to fight. And for me, when you look at it, Tim Tszyu sounds like he wants to go to war. Tim Tszyu sounds like he's ready to go to war. But we've heard that from Tim Tszyu previously. Errol Spence is that cool, calm, collective, confident, ready to go. He doesn't give much away. So we're not going to know what Errol Spence is really like until fight night, which is a bit of a shame because it is so unpredictable. I think we could see two Errol Spences here. I think we can see the Errol Spence that goes in there and demolishes Tim Tszyu. Or we can look at an Errol Spence that has come for a payday and gets knocked out within 2 rounds from Tim Tszyu. Because if Tim Tszyu's approach is that aggressive nature, Tim Tszyu will either win in 2 rounds or lose it late. They're the 2 ways that I see this fight going. And for me, I already made my prediction in the preview video. If you want to go and check that out, go and check that out. But weigh-in's done, fight ready. I'm glad we're actually going to see the main event, considering Stephen Fulton's not showing up and Jamal Charlo's not showing up. At least we're going to see the main event. For me, both guys look good, but it comes down to up here. Who's got the better mentality? The physical stuff will take care of itself. Don't read too much into it, in my opinion, because like I said, Xander Zayas versus John Boutsanis, Bud Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez, Liam Paro versus Lewis Crocker. There is example after example after example. Doesn't matter what your natural weight is. It matters how you perform at the weight that you're in, and it'll depend on how they both turn up. I think Tim Tszyu is very ready to go to war. Errol Spence, nobody knows until we know. Guys, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Like, subscribe. I'm out of here, guys. See ya.